Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. We broadcast 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. Kyle is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Welcome, Rick.
Good morning, Vincent. Can I get more volume? Pump up the volume. Pump up the volume, please.
Yep. Okay. We're gonna do that.
Much better.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's terrible.
Hey.
I don't listen very well because of my eardrums. I shattered them in 1970. People don't realize I did my first dive when I was at American Lake out near Fort Lewis. Was at 100 feet for 4 hours. My first dive required me to decompress for 2 days. I know. I broke one of my eardrums, and I can't hear anymore now.
Rick, can you tell us what the decompression process is like?
Decompression is just sitting in a room. You don't notice any differences. It seems normal, except the ratios of oxygen to helium and nitrogen are different, and they slowly bring you back into true. When you're down that deep for that long, it changes everything in your body. So being in space and this stuff that they're doing in the recent news articles about can you have sex in space or can you conceive, you know, I have to tell you, it's really different when you're in a pressurized container and your body has to readjust to oxygen, nitrogen levels, that kind of thing. It's actually way different than people realize. And that's one of the first things you learn when you actually start to do things like diving. When I was a kid, I used to think I was going way down deep when I would dive off a high tower and go straight down for 30 feet. But 100 feet, it's 9 times more pressure. I mean, we're talking about, like, serious at 100 feet. I made the Guinness Book of Records that year for that long a dive as my first dive. I had a throat mic and everything, and I broadcast radio. I was down underneath. Can you imagine? KTAC in Tacoma. Here we are at 100 feet. Come on down to the dive shop, and we'll show you how to. It was fun.
Rick, I can remember as a child, getting a dime off the bottom of a pool at 8 feet. And then when I went to 10 feet, that was a big pressure change. Just to 2 feet.
Yeah, yeah. And it goes downhill from there. And I was watching some sci-fi where the NCIS, I was 13th year, and they were talking about doing a dive down. They were in decompression for, a week. I think it was something like that. And somebody inside the dive tank killed someone else, and they had to try to do forensics where they couldn't go inside. But, being in a dive thing like that would change the forensics on the body and everything. It was interesting because it was accurate. And they were talking about, like, at 2,000 feet in a bell thing. They had different kinds of divers. Mine was Nowie, so I was scuba diving, but, bell diving was even further where you're in a complete suit and you carry your entire atmosphere down with you. That's a little different.
So when you bell dive, is the decompression process the same Does it take longer?
Approximately the same, because the pressure of the outside to the inside is still changing things, even though it's a closed system. Yes. It's not the same. No. Yes, you have to decompress. Yeah. The getting the bends can be really, really bad. Nitrogen,
your blood boils, right, when you get the bends?
Well, the nitrogen, it squeezes between bones. Oh, man, you don't even want to do that. I saw pictures of people that, they had photos of people that were having problems with the nitrogen narcosis. And it's bad. Yeah, you were real careful about that kind of thing. And you did your own calculations. You didn't rely on somebody doing it for you, that kind of thing.
Well,
you wanted to be responsible, like crossing the street. You didn't let somebody look for you. You always looked for yourself.
Right. So now that you've mentioned this, when you go into a Bell suit and you've got an airline and you've got a cable that'll pull you back up, you are totally 100% at the mercy of whoever's up top, right? 100%.
In some cases, you have some time for recovery, but if you're down that far and you're out of air, it takes you so long to get back up there, and you could be taking in water.
Yeah, no, what I mean is, if someone forgets you and they don't pay attention, or the hose gets cut, or the cable gets cut, or they forget to bring you up in time, you are totally at the mercy of other people who are topside.
Usually I'm in immediate, direct communication with them while I'm down there, like on a moment-to-moment basis. Yeah, or I was back in 1970. Yeah, I saw old movies that were from, where they did that kind of thing, and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Using seashells and walking across with heavy weights. That's interesting. H.G. Wells.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that was interesting. That was to realize that somebody that long ago was thinking about those kinds of things and writing adventures around them. Wow.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was thinking about exactly that this morning. I was thinking about Star Trek, and I was thinking about Captain Kirk, and I'm talking about the original Star Trek, and he had a communicator, which became the flip phone. They had a computer, and they could just ask the computer questions in a human voice, and the computer would give them, a response. And we have that with Alexa and, these electronic gadgets that attach to our home's Wi-Fi network. Now, the question I have for you, and you may not know the answer, is, did we already know this was coming? Was this on the drawing board? Had they already worked out partially some of the details?
No. Everything starts with imagination. And that's why entertainment is one of your 7 primary considerations for survival. It starts there with imagination. The 3D printer never even was conceived until they had the little replicator. And what was it? And The Fifth Element, where she throws this little thing in the thing and pulls out a big turkey all cooked the next moment. I was watching how TV and movies and science fiction stories have shaped our current, today, technology. It didn't start with technology. It starts with imagination, and then they find a way to do it.
And that's kind of what happens in war, right? We have wars.
Everything, actually, yeah.
Well, I'm thinking about necessity being the mother of invention. And the next thing
archetypal. It's like today, one of the things you were going to talk about is electricity. That's like the 6th epoch of man is Taphasia, or trial by fire. And here we are with nuclear radiation and electricity as our primary source of energy. But previous technologies didn't use electricity or radiation. They use sound and movement. And before that, they use da-da-da. And so it is generational in terms of why we would move in this direction. And this epoch, we're using fire as our primary, moving from grub to the stars. And we've gone to the stars before. It's in the Bibles. It's in written manuscripts. It's in our buildings and history as we unearth things. We've been here before, but differently. And it's like we're trying out all the different kinds of ways of being before we merge back into the blue light or God. And I'm not talking about reincarnation because time isn't real in the sense of understanding it now. I remember as an early physicist, the study used to make an assumed truth that the shortest distance between 2 points was a straight line, and that space was not curved. It wasn't until Roger Penrose started talking about torus twistor space to be counted from Stephen Hawking's and white and black holes. They did a book together. People don't even realize that. Point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint on the idea of white and black holes to space being curved. And at the end of that book, they both came to the same conclusion. And that led him to then write his very famous geometric universe. And it's, people don't understand that it is when you make an assumed truth that sets up the reality of what's possible and what is not possible. And so when the minister says, is that house white or is that brown? The correct response is yes, because it's both. In fact, it's all colors. It's just man's limitation of only seeing one side of the house.
You know, as you're saying that, I was thinking about when I do hay this year, and I'm going to be in a tractor for hours and hours and hours going around in circles. I'm going to listen to Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time. I've listened to it about 7 times, 6 times, and I still need to listen to it more to try to understand it. It's about 6 hours of audio. It's an audio book, A Brief History of Time. Dr. Ram's with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. RichardAllenMiller.com. Richard, A-L-A-N, Miller.com. Rick, I was thinking about electricity, and there's absolutely nothing, I think, that we can do in America that doesn't touch electricity, or electricity touches what we do every day. And I was thinking about the power consumption, and, you know, we are now stressing the grid almost to 100% of its maximum capacity. And electric rates keep going up and up and up. And yet, at the same time, all of this is happening, there are proponents of using more electricity. Not using less, using more. And they want to have more electric devices like 5G, which is going to be everywhere. I don't know if there's any way of stopping 5G. And, of course, there's some concerns that all of us have about 5G. And then we have the electric car. And people think this is great because we don't have tailpipe emissions with electric cars. Well, that's absolutely 100% true because electric cars don't have tailpipes. Okay? But they do create electromagnetic radiation, and there is pollution at the generation source. So whether it be nuclear generation, there is pollution. Whether it be coal, or what's called fossil fuels, oil, natural gas. Every method of generation of electricity has some kind of a pollution, even hydroelectric. Hydroelectric, there was pollution in building the hydroelectric equipment. So I guess hydro is probably our best choice. Would you agree with that at this point, Rick?
I'm concerned about our grid, seriously. Even now, our dependency on electricity has reached such epic proportions that just any minor variation from our sun and everything's down. And everything is down, 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 down. That means the cars won't run. That means your food isn't being delivered. That means the ship is not sailing. That means your alarm didn't go off. And that means you can't talk to your daughter across town. Now, it is so serious that nobody, even Matt Stein, we're not ready for it. It will become a serious hardship, and there will be blood. And when I say that, just imagine living in New York City. You're 16 flights up in a hotel, and you have to go to the bathroom. How does that work? And, people haven't even begun to realize how vulnerable everything is. And it's not going to be China and North Korea. It's most likely going to be Pakistan and some kid hacker that plays, oh, look what I can do. And everybody's back into the Stone Age in one moment. And right now, the quality of our radio and communications is at best 35 to 60% right now. You and me. The quality of your voice coming over is gravelly. And that's just because of the recent little burp from the sun. And then we've got deep space and all the rest of what's going on out there. Not even talking about what's happening on Earth and the reboot of our ocean currents and the second magnetic field that has just been discovered. Earth's got several different magnetic fields. And when you start to realize all of this is based on the precipice of just an electric current going down a wire. It's worse than chemtrails in that sense of it. That's why they put those cables underground now, but they're still there, just like the propane is underground. Can you imagine a pipe with gas moving in an area where they have earthquakes? This is crazy. And the whole concept is crazy. And everything is based on electricity. And, the state of Oregon did studies with just the ocean tides, creating power.
Yeah. Back in the 1970s, I remember seeing that on the front cover of, I believe it was Popular Science, where they had these veins or wings that were moved by the ocean currents and generated electricity with them. We'll be right back. Doc Ram's with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. If you'd like to find him, you can type in docram.com, docram.com, or richardallenmiller.com, Richard, A-L-A-N, Miller.com. Rick, I was talking to an electrical engineer at a utility company, and what I want to do is I want to move our meter. I cannot get away from the smart meter. It just will not allow it. And so I'm going to move the smart meters away from the house, several hundred feet away. And I was talking with them about electricity and voltage, and this is kind of a tricky thing that we're doing, moving our power lines that are underground, and it might involve excavation, things like that. We have a backhoe, so we can do that. But what I learned was that the normal voltage in this area starts out at 126 volts. Now, if there's a high voltage demand, we'll drop down to 120. If there's a really high demand, 117. And at the emergency level, we drop down to 114. So we're saying that typically in most homes in the United States, the target voltage is 120 volts. Emergency voltage is down to 114. At that point, it's hard to start electric motors. Refrigerator motors compressors may burn out prematurely. Air handling motors, compressors, those kinds of things may burn out prematurely. So as we add more and more devices to our grid, like 5G, which is not necessary, and electric cars, which are not necessary, we are going to probably see things like premature failures of washing machines, clothes dryers, dishwashers, refrigerators,
this is all being
freezers.
done with intent, and to, like Mopar, where things wear out, eat faster, and need to be replaced, and don't work as well, and you have to replace whole systems, not a vacuum tube, but now you need to do the whole computer screen. It's BS, not 5G. And 5G is more toxic than 4G. And 3G is where synthetic telepathy starts in terms of biological processes. And 5G, we talk in terms of LD50 ratios. And that means a single individual is going to try and take over the world, owning 65% of the world in less than 10 years using this technology. It's all about marketing and control of human species. And an argument can be made about alien invasion. This is BS. And the bad news is you can't get away from it even on top of a mountain. That's what our atmosphere is supposed to do, is screen us from this kind of crap, not hold it down in on Earth.
Elon Musk was reported in the media as being extremely concerned about AI, artificial intelligence, and in maybe a decade, it taking over. And we will be held hostage. We humans will be held hostage by computer machines. And I can see that.
Well, that's the movie Terminator. That's why the movie came out when it did. That's where we're going, just like Star Trek. Look, it's handwriting on the wall. It's time to wake up, draw some lines. That's why Matt Stein and I originally started this whole nonsense about grid down in the first place. It's going to drop everybody back into the deepest levels of survival needs.
Okay. Well, let me just let our class know how concerned I am about this. I am so concerned about the fragility of the power grid, the power generation system, the unavailability of electricity. That's one of the main reasons why we moved from the East Coast to the Ozark Mountains of Missouri. That's one of the reasons why, a very significant reason, why I spent months and months and months building the solar panel rack, engineering it from scratch so that it would survive winds, 100-mile-an-hour winds, and still be there to generate electricity. And we're doing it right now. This broadcast is via the sun. The sun's shining, it's charging the batteries, the inverter is running, and it's powering the farm. Well, I'm so concerned that I'm spending our life savings of 4 generations on the ability to continue generating electricity for our farm, because I believe that it is so fragile that when it's no longer available, people are going to die very, very quickly, faster than we ever thought. And let me just give you one simple example. So Mrs. Finelli contracted pneumonia, and she needed to see a doctor. Okay? Her doctor was unavailable. The fill-in doctor had pneumonia. They were overwhelmed with pulmonary cases at the medical center. And there are 2 very large medical centers in Springfield, Missouri. They're about the same size. And the one we go to was overwhelmed with respiratory cases. And the doctors themselves were sick with pneumonia. Very, very, very serious. So what I'm saying is, if you think it's going to be there when you need it, that may not be the case. In the United States, we're running out of antibiotics because there was such a demand for them that they were in short supply. Not only that, to make matters worse, Some diseases are antibiotic resistant. So what we're looking at is just a compounding of threats that circle us 360 degrees. And electricity is a chief among them. It is a really big threat because without it, many of us will die. No refrigeration, no supply line, no products, no manufacturing, no water, no sewage treatment, no chlorine to treat the water, no trains moving.
You're back to your great-grandfather's way of life.
Yeah, and maybe that isn't so bad, but getting there is going to be pure pain, because our great-grandfathers knew how to find food. We think food comes from the store. We think water comes from the faucet. And if the faucet drips, we don't know what to do about it, so we call a plumber.
You know, food
and that's another thing.
10 times less important than water. And water is 10 times less important than air. 3 minutes for air, 3 days for water, and 3 weeks for food. You got to set up priorities.
I'd like to share a story with you, and this all ties together, class. So we got a call from our daughter. She lives 1,100 miles away. And she said that her water heater was leaking on the floor. And I said, okay, can you get me a picture of it? So she sent me a picture, and we got more pictures, and I asked for more pictures. And this was late at night, Friday night. And I diagnosed the problem. I said, look, based on this particular problem, you're not going to be able to fix this. There's nothing that you're going to be able to do. There's no wrench turning that you're going to be able to accomplish without some parts. You're actually going to need a new hot water heater. It's at the end of its life, and the tank itself is leaking. So she made some calls the next morning, and she called Roto-Rooter. Roto-Rooter quoted her $1,600 for a water heater exchange. $1,600. So she called me, and I said, you got to be kidding. The water heater, if you just went to Lowe's, you could get one for about $500. It's a 50-gallon water heater. It's natural gas. So I said, boy, that's a lot of money, $1,100 for 2 hours worth of work to install it. And I said, it would be the same price for me to drive out there and do it for you as to have them do it. So she called around, and there's a neighbor who does this. This is what he does. He's a plumber. He puts in hot water heaters. And so he quoted her $1,450. I said, that's ridiculous. She said he's a friend and he's a neighbor. I said, well, he's certainly not a friend. Because the job she cost $700 total, maybe $800. So she made some more calls, and she found a guy that would do it for $1,175, which I think is still outrageous. But the guy wouldn't be able to do it until a couple days later. So there were some calls made to Home Depot. Home Depot has on their website that if you call before noon, they will have a hot water heater installed for you the same day. So she was busy making calls, and Mrs. Finelli was making calls simultaneously from here, 1,000 miles away, 1,100 miles away. And we finally got the guy at Home Depot because he wasn't there. He was at lunch, and he'd be back after 12 o'clock, after the timeline for getting it installed that day. So water's leaking on the floor all this time. So, I told her how to shut the water off, and we got that stopped, but it was a mess. And here's the point. So Home Depot says, no, that's not how we do it. The website says that's how we do it, but that's not what we do. What we do is if you have a water heater leak, you call us, and we will call our contractor. Our contractor will come out to your house and assess what is necessary to repair and replace, and we'll get back to you and with a price. But that won't be till Monday. What I'm saying is, you look at the website, you think somebody's going to come at your beck and call, and it's not true. It's not true. So now you have the local guy who's going to rip you off. You've got your friend who's going to rip you off. And then you make some more calls, and you find another guy that'll do it for $1,150 or $1,175. Yeah, $1,175. But he can't do it for a couple days. So you call back your friend and say, look, you said $1,400. I found a guy that I don't even know. He'll do it for $1,175. And then your friend says, you know what? I'll match that. Here's the point. The point is, we are at each other's throats now. There's no such thing as friendship. It's dog eat dog for the most part. And that's the point. And I think it's going to get worse. Doc Ram and I'll be right back. Doc Ram's with us. Rick, I just want to share something. I mentioned this one time on the air, but it's germane to what we're talking about today. And that is, we had a neighbor, and his fence borders ours, so his property is right next to ours. I mean, you go to our farm, and then his farm is on the other side of the fence, a barbed wire fence. And so he wanted to run for the county commissioner position, and he called me up, and he said, hey, Vincent, I'm going to run, and I wanted to know if you'd support me. I said, absolutely, absolutely. Love it. You can count on me to support you. Okay. So I did. So a year later, I decided to run for, a year or so later, I decided to run for the board of directors for the electric cooperative, and I call him up. And I say, hey, I'm taking a page out of your book. You wanted to run for the county commissioner's position. I supported you. I'm going to run for the board of directors of the electric cooperative, and I want to reduce electric rates. That's my platform. I want to reduce them and do what I can. And will you consider signing a petition to nominate me as someone who will run as a member supported by the membership for the board of directors? He said, "Oh, geez, geez, you caught me off guard." I said, "You know what? You don't have to do it. It's okay." He didn't want to do it. So I went around town and I talked to some people and I said, would you consider signing the petition to nominate me? You don't have to vote for me, but I want to reduce the electric rates. And people said, I don't want to get involved. I just don't want to get involved. I don't get involved in those things. So I'm saying I want to reduce their electric rates, and I'm having trouble getting support from the people who live in the village where I live. Unbelievable, right? Well, the whole point of that, and I'm not whining and I'm not complaining, I'm just saying that when you think that there are people who are going to be with you and help you and support you, I think that's a pipe dream. I think that's a wish. Let me give you another example. So you've heard of these men's clubs, and I'm sure there are women's clubs. I don't know much about women's clubs other than a club called the Women's Club. But there are men's clubs, and what are they? They're like the Lions and the Rotary and the Kiwanis and the Knights of Columbus, and then there are business clubs. Now, some business clubs have women and men, which is great. Well, guys go to these, gals go to the clubs, and they all have the same thing. If you go to the Lions Club, you'll find a realtor, you'll find an accountant, you'll find, guys in different, an insurance guy, all walks of business you'll find in these clubs. And the clubs are couched in friendship and charity and all that. But actually, I think the main reason is it's a social organization that uses this organization to garner business. So when someone says, I'm thinking about buying a property, I got a friend. He's in the Lions Club with me. He's a realtor. What a good guy. You'll love him. He'll take care of you. He'll protect you. He's the guy. And if you're in the Rotary Club, same thing. Kiwanis Club, same thing. Knights of Columbus, same thing. Well, so I have a friend who has a farm, and he wanted to buy some gravel, crushed stone for his driveway. His driveway is like a quarter of a mile long. So we had a tremendous rain. He wanted to fill in the washed out parts with gravel. And he called me up and he said, Vinny, what kind of gravel should I buy? And I told him the kind of gravel. And I said, if you want, I'll call the guy that I get mine from, and we'll get a quote for you. So I called my guy. He called his guy. We talked a couple of days later. He called me back and he said, "Hey, Vinny, I got the guy. I'm getting the gravel delivered, the kind that you recommended. Everything's all set." I said, "Okay, so what'd you pay for it?" He said $250, and he's giving me a break because I'm in the club. And I said, $250. My guy's $180. So what I'm telling you is that you may think that you're getting a good deal from your buddies in the club, and I'm telling you it's probably not true. I think they're taking advantage of these club members. Rick, you have a comment before you go into the break?
That's my comment, man. Let the buyer beware.
Yep. All right, electricity when we come back.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about electricity and 5G. How dependent we are the pitfalls, the dangers. Doc Rams with us, Dr. Richard Alan Miller, Richard A-L-A-N Miller, physicist. And we'll be back right after top of the hour news and commercial announcements. I'm going to go check how much electricity we've generated this morning and see how our batteries are, what the charge level is on our batteries when we come back. I'm all set. Cock, lock, hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Doc Rams with us. Rick, there's this camera that I just can't get over where technology is going. So, like the Apple phone the iPhone has a little charger. It's the size of it's a cube, maybe 3/4 of an inch square, maybe 1 inch square, or 1 inch cube. And you plug it into your standard wall receptacle, and then you plug in a USB cable to that, and it will let you charge your phone at the end of this cable. Well, I was reading within the last month about these spy devices, and there's one called a SNAP, S-N-A-P, Smart Cam security camera. Now, this thing is the same size as the Apple phone charger, and it has a pinhole camera. And so you can plug this into your wall, and you can plug your charging cable into it as well, and it will take pictures and transmit them wirelessly across your Wi-Fi network, and you can even watch what's happening remotely on your phone while you're at work. So this thing, it's impossible to see, from if you walk in a room, that this is not just a wall charger. It's a camera transmitter device. It's a spy device. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this, Rick, is because people may have them in their homes. They may have them in their kitchen counter, in an outlet that it looks like a regular wall charger, but you are being spied on, and that data of the images that this is capturing 24 hours a day goes out on the internet.
So now you've got a camera and mic on your computer.
Yeah. And this.
Yeah, imagine that. And when your computer's off, and I'm sitting here talking on the phone, and my computer is turning off and on. Who's doing that? Not me.
I have all of the computer equipment that I have here at the farmhouse is old, and a lot of the monitors that are being sold, and for years they've been sold this way, they have cameras in them, so you can sit and face your monitor, and your camera is looking at you while so you can use Skype, video and those kinds of things. Wonderful. Well, I don't have that. I don't want that, and I don't have computers with microphones in them. But that's a huge problem. And if you have one, you might want to put a piece of black tape across it. Now, as far as the microphone's concerned, if you have, there is a way, and I was reading about it, I don't remember all the details, but you can reverse the camera and the microphone setting remotely. So someone can switch the settings and say the camera's the microphone's the camera, and you can have, you can still be monitored by them reversing the camera and the microphone from afar, remotely. This is invasive. And even if I don't have any of this stuff in my house, these spy gadgets that transmit wirelessly, that are connected to the internet ultimately, and people can, what a great way to decide if you want to burglarize a house. Hey, no one's home, right? How do you know? Because you can see in the house. Well, even though I don't have these devices in our farmhouse, for everyone's protection, mine as well as our guests, they may have them in their house. And so I may be on camera at their house, which I object to, which means I travel less and go fewer places, because I don't like this. And with 5G, it's going to be worse. Is it not, Rick?
It's going to drop all kinds of levels of privacy.
So let's say I wanted to go on the run, okay? Let's say I just decided, you know what, I've had it. I don't want to be tracked anymore. I don't think I could do it. Because I certainly couldn't have a phone. I couldn't talk to my family. We now have license plate readers that are on top of these police cars. We have these traffic control vehicles, police cars, that are riding around, and they have these license plate scanners on the roofs, and they can read license plates. And when someone's registration expires, they get notified immediately, and they can pull you over. They don't even have to pay attention. They don't even have to look at the little sticker that says, the year and the month of the expiration of the license plates. It's now scanned automatically with these computers that are in the police cars.
I have a quick one. I just sent you something via Sandy, and it bounced. And I wanted to talk to you about it. So did you get my email just now?
No, and I'll tell you why. I've been on the phone with Bluehost. That's our web hosting service and company. And our emails, all of the USA Prepares emails have been down for days. So I was up till late at night talking to their technical support people, saying, let's see if we can figure this out. All the emails to... Yeah.
I'm with Bluehost also. That's my own server.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so what happened is all of the emails that say a name at usaprepares.com don't work. So I've been on the phone with them, and we've for over an hour trying. They can't even send me an email from their own personal emails to get to any of the email addresses at USA Prepares. And so they said, well, it could be 24 to 48 hours. I called them yesterday. It was almost 48 hours, and they said, oh, yeah, it could be 48 to 72. Pretty soon they're going to say 128. Then they're going to say 3 months. So it's a problem. And what I'm trying to alert our class to is if you think that things just are going to keep working, that's a wish.
You're right about that part.
A wish.
And right now, the thing I tried to send you is about crops destroying blizzard and what you have going on right now just in your own state.
Well, that's another thing I want to talk to you about.
I've got a picture of deep snow still and heavy snows on upper Midwest.
That was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. The weather extremes are unbelievable.
It's 30 degrees difference for a number of reasons. The primary one is there's a pole shift that's happened, and the North Pole and the South Pole are moving toward each other and are going to probably meet somewhere in the Indian Ocean, probably where the second Stargate is buried. Just kidding. I'm not kidding. It's happening right now.
Okay. So we are seeing 30-plus degree temperature changes in 24 hours.
Below normal. Yeah, 30 degrees below normal for this time of year. Yes.
No, I'm talking about the 30-degree delta, maybe 35, 38-degree delta between yesterday and today, that kind of a thing.
Oh, I'm talking about from what it was last year and historically.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Here's another thing. Of course, you mentioned, and I've mentioned for a couple of years now, that the trees are dying. Yeah, they're dying, and I mean they look horrible. Well, the other thing that's a problem for us, if someone said, "What do you guys do on your farm?" I would say we grow grass. I'm talking about green grass, and that cows eat. And what we're noticing is these weather shifts are so dramatic that we have to plant different types of grass now, because there are warm season grasses and cool season grasses. So we now have to seed our fields with many types of grasses so that at least one of them is going to be growing at any point in time, because the weather is confusing the grasses. Does that make sense, Rick, or am I imagining this?
Well, no, we are in the end of days. That is, the Bible Bellers want to believe it. They're making it happen, just like they're with their belief systems, just like Star Trek. It is part of what is going on right now.
Well, it's really...
Well, basically, I could put it this way. The East Coast has just recently gone through a mini day after tomorrow.
Yeah. Yep. You're talking about the snow, the ice.
Oh, yeah. I had a friend in New Jersey that made the comment, if you're planning to get a snowplow, make sure it has a cab.
Absolutely. If you're planning to get...
I mean, it's going to be like that.
Well, it's I would say it's that and more. If you're planning on getting a tractor, make sure it has a cab. And I'm very serious. We have a Deutsch tractor, which is a 100 horsepower or so tractor. It's wonderful, but it doesn't have a cab. So I found one that does have a cab, and it doesn't work too well. It needs a lot of work, and we're going to fix it. But it has a cab, and we need to have a cab because in the summer it is so hot it is unbearable to work on the fields. It's unbearable to cut the hay. Unbearable. In the winter, it's unbearable because the snow, the sleet, the rain, it's miserable. So we need to have, believe it or not, a tractor for a farm with heat and air conditioning. Seriously. Because it's that hard on the person working in these tractors. Because you've got the engine, you've got the sun, so you get a sunshade. But the heat off the engine is so high that you can't stand it. So you need to have air conditioning. That's where we're going. And let me just share something else. Because we have a farm, and because the grass grows, and because the cows pee and poop on the grass, it makes the soil more acidic. And we deplete the nutrients in the soil over the years. So we could put fertilizer on there, commercial fertilizer, but we don't. What we use is the cow manure that the cows provide from eating the grass. But we have to lime the fields. We need 240,000 pounds of lime for our fields right now. We couldn't get anybody, not one company, not one person would be willing to spread lime on our fields. And we're not the only farm that has grass. Almost all the farms around here have grass, but there's no lime spreading companies. No one will do it. I'll tell you what we did when we come back. So class, as farmers, certain things that we have to do. We have to maintain our fields and keep them fertile. And no one would spread lime. And we can buy the lime and we can have it hauled in with a tractor trailer or a big dump truck or dump trucks. We need 240,000 pounds of lime to put on our fields this year, and we couldn't get anybody to do it. So we thought about, all right, so maybe we can spread it. Well, we have a little spreader, but it only holds 500 pounds. It'd take forever. It goes on the back of our tractor. That wouldn't work. So we looked on the internet and we found an old salt spreader, a highway department type salt spreader, and on a truck. And this truck would be, if you wanted to know how big it is, it's whatever the largest size U-Haul diesel truck is. That's how big this is. So like, the 26-foot or 24-foot U-Haul diesel. That's the size of this truck. It's got 4 wheels in the back and 2 for steering. It's a pretty heavy truck, and it'll hold 14,000 pounds of lime. So that's what we're going to use to spread it, and we're going to do it ourselves. Now, why am I telling you this story? Because I want you to realize that you do not have to be defeated, whatever the situation is. If you come across an obstacle that seems to be one that you just can't get over or around or through, there is a way, and you can figure it out. So we paid less for this truck than a typical person would pay for a used car. Now, this is a truck and the spreader combined. Yeah, we're going to have to do some work, and we're going to have to get out the welder, and we're going to have to get some steel, and we're going to have to cut and weld and, patch it together. But we'll be able to do that. Now, I know what's going to happen. I know that our neighbors are going to see us. They're going to go, wow, who you got spreading your lime? And we're going to say, we're doing it. Can you do ours too? I know that's going to happen. So just think about those kinds of solutions that you can get around these problems. You just have to be creative and don't give up. Okay. Another thing I'd like to share with you is our son just pulled into the farm. He just came back from the John Deere dealer. Now we have several John Deere tractors, and one of them is a 20 horsepower, an old tiny tractor. It's like the size of a big lawnmower. And we have another one that's 40 horsepower. Then we have another one that's about 100 horsepower. Well, on the small tractors, There is no small tractor that you can buy in the United States under 40 horsepower that's made in the United States. As a matter of fact, I don't think you can buy one under, I don't even know if you can buy a U.S. tractor anymore. Well, here's what John Deere does. So we needed two V-belts, and this would be sometimes they're called fan belts, and it would drive the fan to cool the radiator, the engine, the alternator, and the water pump. Well, John Deere has figured out a way of not saying what the size of the belt is. So if you want one of these $7 belts, you can get one at John Deere for $22. So it's 3 times more expensive because they will not say the belt is this wide and is this long, like everybody else does. So if you want to get a fan belt for a 1980s, 90s vintage American car, you can take that fan belt off, bring it to the auto parts store, and they've got a little gauge that will measure how wide the fan belt is and how long it is. They'll say, okay, you need a 4/8 of an inch or 4L80, meaning 4/8 of an inch wide and 80 inches long. Their little gauge will tell you that. You go to this same auto parts store with the John Deere tractor belt, and they'll say, well, that's metric. We don't have that width. And they're right. They don't. So we're being squeezed at the throat by companies like John Deere, who have made it so that we can't get parts without buying them from them. Is that as bad as it gets? No. Let's throw in Apple. So Apple comes out with a new operating system for their iPhone. Okay? So let's say you've dropped your phone, you've cracked your screen, and you go, geez, Apple's way too expensive. I'll have this other guy fix it at the kiosk at the store or the mall. He fixes it for you at 1/4 the price. You do the Apple update, you get the latest operating system, and it doesn't recognize your screen's functions. So now your new screen is worthless. That's Apple. That's what they do. Rick, I'd love to hear your comments when we come back. Rick, do you have any comments on what I said about companies, corporations, large corporations forcing us to buy?
I think that this is an argument for why we're about to have an apocalypse. It's time to reorganize everything and the way we do what we do. It's mega businesses like Amazon and Google and Facebook. Even Congress doesn't get it in terms of what Facebook does and how they manufacture information. It's the whole thing of wearing out parts and the concepts of Mopar and working with plastic over steel. Do you know that plastic now is in everything? It's killing wildlife in the ocean. It's in your drinking water. It's in everything now.
Rick,
using plastic over metal. That was over packaging. That is our refuge piles and our waste material, that was originally going to be used to be recycled. That was the big keyword in the 70s, was recycling.
Yep.
It's not happening. It's not happening on any level, literally. And while lip service is one thing, what's actually happening is another. And you'd be blind not to acknowledge it. And it all begins with you getting up off the couch and starting your own little program. Each of us is different, but it's time to start practicing what you preach. That walking the talk. You want to be an ecologist and eco-friendly? Prove it.
Okay. Rick, I have a real neat way of looking at the changes in technology, specifically plastic that you're talking about. We have a lift here at the farm, and I've mentioned this, over the years. We have a rotary lift, and you can put up a car or a truck up in the air and get under it. And that's how we service some of our vehicles. We use it all the time, every day. Well, we got a request from a neighbor who had a Kia, and they asked if we could check out this Kia that they bought and post-inspection, and make sure it's okay and safe to drive and all that. They already bought it. They just want to know, did they do the right thing? So we were all over this Kia, and it has the thinnest sheet metal I've ever seen. And it has more plastic than years ago. So much plastic, I couldn't believe how much plastic is in this Kia. Well, yesterday I was working on another vehicle, not one of ours, a 1976 Ford F-250 gas-powered pickup truck. And my son came up to me and he said, "Wow, you really like this truck, don't you, Dad?" And I said, "What makes you say that?" And he goes, "Well, you're impressed with it." And I said, "Well, look at it. Look, the steel inside fenders, the way that you can work on it, the way you can access everything. Look at the frame. You can see the frame. Look at how the engineers at Ford back then wanted all of these pipes or lines that run fuel to be parallel, straight, and they look nice. They're easy to service. Look at the vehicles today. They're darn near impossible to service. Okay? They're disposable vehicles. But years ago in the 70s and before, these vehicles were designed
like the DeLorean, where you tried to design something that was the best, using the highest level of technology, so it would never wear out.
Oh, yeah,
DeLorean.
and including the body.
The whole concept. You narf it, it's okay. It's like today, the whole thing is about marketing and money, and that is over. And whether you believe me or not, trust me when I tell you, the concept of currency is history. And with that, all these different marketing schemes of how to supply customer service is over. And it's a death knell, and nobody gets it yet. And it's going to be the junkyards that are going to become gold mines.
You're right. You're right, because we throw things out like all of these switches that we throw out, these wall switches that have silver contacts. Not just wall switches, but all kinds of switches and all kinds of electrical devices mostly have silver contacts because they conduct electricity very, very well, and they're mostly immune from oxidation. And we just throw them away. It's just switch, you know. We don't recover the material in it. Pretty soon we're going to find out that we're going to have to go mining in the landfills. I mean, I can see that.
That's exactly how all the new sci-fi is putting it, just like Star Trek did.
Mm-hmm. So, Rick, I was thinking about people who, boy, you know, the things that they've developed have really, you know, initially we thought, well, this is really neat. Bill Gates, you know, disk operating system, Windows, a copy of Apple's Macintosh software, really great. But now these computer operating systems are being used to spy on us and so forth. So I was thinking about who are people who might have had some good ideas in the beginning, but we've learned to hate what they've done because they're destroying the planet. And here are some of those names. I'd love to hear your comments. Alfred Nobel, okay? The Nobel Peace Prize guy, right? He is the guy who patented a safer dynamite, okay? Because before that it was nitroglycerin. So now we have dynamite that's easier and safer to handle, and he thought that, you know, this would be a good thing and would help peace. No. We used that during the wars, and we blew up men, women, children, buildings, and countries. Okay, that's Alfred Nobel. Then we have Arthur Galston. What did he come up with? He invented Agent Orange. He thought it'd be really good, right, as a defoliant. Well, it has wreaked havoc on the Vietnam veterans. Then you have a guy named Mikhail Kalashnikov. He wanted to defend his country. His AK-47 has killed more people than probably any other handheld gun. Okay, then you've got a guy named Cameron Longman. And what did he invent? Weapons-grade pepper spray. And then let's go on to Orville Wright. He invented the airplane. He thought this would be a really cool thing, and you could move people through the air. Well, it's used for bombs and bombing buildings, people, countries. And then you've got Robert Oppenheimer. He was credited with the invention. He didn't do it by himself, but he was the ringleader. He was the head knocker of the atomic bomb. So there you have some guys who have all regretted their inventions, their creations.
How about old man DuPont and better living through chemistry?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, these are just 6 guys that I'm talking about. Yeah, old man DuPont, obviously, you're right. You're absolutely correct. His plastic is toxic all over the planet. As a matter of fact, they found a whale that died from eating, what was it? It was a piece of plastic. It was huge.
Yeah, stuff that floats in the sea.
Yes. Rubber tires, we throw them out. We just dump them. There are ways that we can recycle, but the people who create these things, obviously the guy who comes up with the steel-belted radial says, this is really cool because this tire is going to last longer. But then in the lasting longer, why doesn't he say, but when it wears out, we are left with something that is really hard to recycle? What do we do with it? Because those steel belts are darn near impossible to cut through. I'm saying we need to be more cautious. We need to be more proactive. We need to be more judicious in what we do so that we don't create these nightmares like the plastic nightmare that's killing the oceans. Just, class, look in your kitchen trash container. Just look at what's in there. Some cans, yeah, and maybe some pizza boxes, and some plastic 2-liter bottles, and some milk bottles, and some plastic jars with plastic lids. We treat plastic like it's free, and it's never ending, and we don't have to worry about where it goes when we throw it out because we don't look at it anymore. It goes to the landfill. Then it gets covered up. And then you have a mountain. Mount trash, right? Mount trash. And there's a Mount trash near every city. And it's threatening the water supply because rainwater lands on Mount trash. It goes through Mount trash. It creates leachate, which penetrates ultimately the liner at the bottom of Mount trash, and it contaminates the water supply. Have I said anything incorrect, Rick?
No, it's time for us to revision how we live and why we do what we do.
Okay, so the next step is, I'm so concerned about these things, I bought an ultraviolet air purifier for our heating and air conditioning ductwork. Class, here's what it is. It's about $35. You can find it on the internet. All it is a 13-watt fluorescent-style Philips base, and PL base. They used to call these lights PL13s, and they were in outdoor fixtures for outdoor lighting and desk lamps and so forth. Well, that size base and light and wattage can be found from made in China to emit ultraviolet light. And if you have the power supply, the ballast for that, you can put that in your heating and air conditioning system. And as the air circulates, it disinfects the bacteria and pathogens in the air. Pretty cool, right? So I bought one, and I bought a bunch of light bulbs for it. So we're all set. Next thing we bought, pathogens, biologicals I'm concerned about in the water. Well, I bought an ultraviolet water purification system. It comes from China, pretty much like everything else does. This is a stainless steel cylinder, and in it is a quartz tube, and in the quartz tube is a ultraviolet lamp. Water goes through it in our house water system, potable water system, and it disinfects the water. You might want to consider doing those. I'd love to hear what Rick has to say about that, and then some quick thoughts on 5G. 11 reasons to be concerned about 5G radiation. George is on hold. We'll be George in New Hampshire. Welcome. You're on with Rick Miller and me.
Hi, Vince. Hi, Dr. Miller.
Hey.
You mentioned about tires. I just wanted to chime in, if I may, they found that if they had this process where they'd take all these junk tires and they'd grind them up and they'd mix it in with the asphalt for roads, and they said they showed a road after 10 years with this processed tires mixed in with the asphalt, and they showed just an ordinary asphalt road after 10 years. And the rubber mix actually looked superior and held up better, lasted longer. And they said that the pavers had so much work as it was, they couldn't even really do more than maybe 44% of the required paving that they needed to do. They just couldn't keep up with it. This would at least maybe reduce it so that, in other words, you'd have like maybe another 40% or 35% that was actually keeping its integrity and didn't need as much maintenance. And they said the Paving Association, National Paving Association, went in, lobbied hard to get the process done away with. Yeah. So, and I'm just saying, so what do you have? You have millions of tires in landfills, and they say you can even use them for deadening. And I know, Dr. Rick, you know, I mean, you could grow all kinds of things. I'm sure you know too, Vince. In tires, like they said, you could use the old tires to grow potatoes or different things.
Well, that's exactly correct. That's what we did when I lived in the country. We used them for tomatoes because they attract the heat and keep the root systems warm, even in a colder system, and you get better fruiting on your tomatoes and potatoes and the things of that nature. That's correct. You stack them.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. We have a neighbor who does that. He takes the tires, takes a Sawzall, a reciprocating saw, and he cuts the tread out. So he separates the tread from the sidewall, and he uses the tread, if you will, as a ring. And he puts dirt in there, soil, and he grows his tomatoes and his peppers, and they are the best I've ever seen, year after year after year.
Yeah, because of the
so
heat.
He has
it keeps the heat in the soil.
He has a garden. Right, he has a garden that has these tires in it. He must have, 50 or 100 tires, and he just fills them with dirt, and it's easy to maintain. He's got walkways, between these rows of tires with the plants, and it's absolutely fabulous. It really, really works well. Then what he does is he takes the sidewalls, and he puts them around trees that he's going to start. And it makes a nice ring around the tree, and it helps protect the tree from, it just puts mulch in that tire ring, and that works really well as well. Now, it's not something that you'd want to have if you had a gated community or gated village, and, you wanted to impress the neighbors. You wouldn't want that. But here on the farm, it's great.
You know, another use for that inner tire ring, too, you can put wood that you want to split, sections of wood, and just pile them in there so that they're side by side, all held together by that ring of that tire. Mm-hmm. And it'll make it easier for splitting, keeping them together. They won't go flying as much. Do you mind one thing, Vin? I just want to ask Dr. Rick if he could re-announce that. I know this summer, Rick, you're going to be about 100 miles from me, so I may try to come over.
Well, it's unconfirmed, but right now, yeah, you're talking about Sterling College and teaching up in Vermont. Yes.
All right. No, I just didn't know. I thought, like I said.
Sterling College, yeah. Uh-huh.
No, I appreciate updates on that when you do get confirmation.
Yes.
That'll be good. All right, gentlemen, I just wanted to chime in on that. But like I say, you've got people out there that will stand in the way because they'll chase, like the greenbacks, and they'll put that ahead of everything, even the welfare of the world. So, so what can you do?
Yes.
All right. God bless.
Well, I guess.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thank you, George. What can you do? I think the answer is we're going to find out as we go further down into the abyss. We're going to find out, is the shooting going to start? What are we going to do? I don't know. But I'm sure we're all going to find out. And it's going to be miserable. Worse than miserable. It's going to be pain. Awful. And we did it. Not we, but, people. People have done this to other people. In the pursuit of greed. Rick, any last second thoughts?
No, I'm good.
Rick, thanks so much for being with us. Dr. Richard Allen Miller, DocRam.com.